The tension inside the private dining room skyrocketed the exact moment my grandfather asked a seemingly innocent question. My name is Chelsea, a 31-year-old regional sales manager who spent years playing by the rules, only to have my toxic relatives treat my hard work like a personal bank account. Did you like the birthday gift I got you? My grandfather asked with a warm smile illuminating his face. What gift are you talking about because I never received anything? I replied in complete confusion. My father suddenly started trembling violently while his fumbling fingers caused a heavy crystal wine glass to slip directly from his hand. The loud crash of shattering glass echoed through the quiet space as dark red liquid spilled rapidly across the pristine oak table. My mother remained entirely silent while staring down at the floor, with her hands tightly gripping the edge of her blouse. My grandfather frowned deeply as the cheerful smile completely vanished from his lips before he slowly turned toward the attorney sitting beside him. I want to know exactly what is going on right now, he stated with a chilling authority that made the entire room freeze. The lawyer did not answer with spoken words, but instead calmly reached for the leather briefcase resting underneath the table. He unfastened the metal latch with a sharp click that sounded deafening within the suffocating silence of the paralyzed room. None of my relatives realized that stealing my property was about to trigger a massive federal investigation that would permanently destroy their meticulously crafted illusion of wealth. Before I explain exactly how this elaborate financial trap snapped shut on them, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button alongside, turning on notifications if you have ever had to use the legal system to protect yourself from manipulative family members. Exactly 3 weeks before that disastrous dinner took place, my corporate office deployed me on an extended business trip to Dallas. My primary assignment required conducting a comprehensive supply chain audit across several distribution centers operating throughout the southern region. Right before driving toward the airport departure terminal, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off my spare apartment key. I specifically asked my mother, Carol, to visit my place every 3 days to water the potted plants sitting on my balcony. During the first week of my rigorous inspection schedule, my grandfather Calvin instructed his estate attorney to finalize a very specific property transfer. He wanted to give me a wooden lake house located right on the shoreline of Lake Norman as a surprise 31st birthday present. The building was a valuable asset he originally purchased decades ago during his career as a commercial construction contractor. The attorney dispatched a courier from Federal Express to deliver the sealed document folder directly to my residential address in Charlotte. The delivery driver attempted to call my personal cell phone 4 separate times throughout the duration of Thursday afternoon. At that exact moment, I was standing deep inside an industrial cold storage warehouse, verifying inventory logs where zero cellular reception existed. Following the alternative delivery authorization previously filed by the sender, the courier placed the thick envelope firmly against my front door before taking a confirmation photograph and driving away. While that envelope sat untouched in my quiet hallway, a volatile situation was rapidly deteriorating inside my parents' living room. My younger brother Gavin sat slumped on their sofa while fielding relentless phone calls from aggressive online creditors. He had recently taken out massive high-interest personal loans from unregulated lenders to chase his escalating digital gambling losses. Those aggressive investors were now demanding immediate full account liquidation to cover his catastrophic betting deficits. The harsh voices of debt collectors echoing through his smartphone speaker made the atmosphere inside the house completely suffocating. Gavin was staring at the wall in absolute panic because he knew failing to settle the balance would trigger severe legal consequences along with immediate asset seizure. My father, Alan, paced the floor continuously while trying to formulate a strategy to bail his precious son out of another massive financial disaster. Carol drove over to my apartment complex later that same afternoon, intending to complete the simple watering chore I requested. The moment she unlocked my door and stepped over the welcome mat, her foot brushed against the rigid cardboard packaging resting on the floorboards. She picked up the parcel bearing the recognizable purple shipping logo and immediately ripped the security tab open without a single ounce of hesitation. She pulled out a heavy stack of legal papers, including a finalized quitclaim deed bearing my grandfather's verified signature. The legal document explicitly stated the immediate transfer of the Lake Norman property directly into my name. Carol read quickly through the legal terms before shoving the entire folder deep into her large leather handbag. She completely ignored the dry plants waiting on the balcony as she locked the door and rushed straight back to her own house to confront her husband. She threw the stolen documents onto the granite kitchen island right in front of where Gavin was sitting with his head buried inside his hands. Alan immediately pulled the papers closer to read the property details before flipping open his laptop computer to search the county real estate database. He typed the address into the appraisal portal to verify the current market value of the waterfront structure. Alan quickly realized the unencumbered property possessed more than enough equity to secure a massive cash mortgage from any commercial bank. The heavy burden of Gavin's impending financial ruin hovered directly over their heads while they stared at my birthday present. My parents did not view the deed as a generous gift meant to establish my independent future stability. They looked at the document as an emergency lifeline perfectly designed to rescue their golden child from his own reckless decisions. Alan looked directly at Carol, while officially declaring they would keep the package completely hidden and never breathe a single word about the lake house to me. They mutually agreed to sacrifice my property without a second thought, because protecting Gavin from his creditors was the only objective that actually mattered to them. Only a few days later, a commercial recovery vehicle rolled into the driveway during the middle of the night to repossess Gavin's luxury sports car. The loud grinding noise of the hydraulic winch echoed through the quiet neighborhood, while Gavin stood helpless on the front porch, watching his prized possession disappear down the dark street. His fiancée, Avery, dragged her heavy designer suitcase directly into the center of the living room, while loudly declaring her intention to permanently cancel their upcoming wedding. She delivered a strict ultimatum demanding Gavin completely eliminate his mounting credit deficits before the end of the month, or she would walk out of his life forever. Alan intervened by ushering his son into his own vehicle at dawn to drive toward a dilapidated strip mall located on the outer edge of the city limits. Alan carried his leather briefcase containing the original quitclaim deed, along with an old apartment lease agreement bearing my authentic signature. They walked into a dimly lit office belonging to an unlicensed document preparation service operating completely outside standard legal regulations. The shady operator sitting behind a cluttered desk accepted the paperwork before placing my outdated rental contract onto a high-resolution scanning machine. The harsh light of the scanner captured my exact handwriting, so the technician could meticulously extract the signature using editing software. He carefully superimposed my copied name directly onto the authorization line of the new property transfer form to make it appear as though I willingly surrendered the estate to Gavin. Alan then pushed a thick envelope filled with untraceable cash across the table toward a corrupt notary public working out of the back room. That compromised official firmly pressed his official ink seal onto the forged paperwork without ever requesting my photo identification or requiring my physical presence. He falsified his official registry logbook to document the transaction as a legitimate interaction before handing the finalized pages back to Alan. That exact same afternoon, Alan walked confidently into the county recorder's office to permanently file the fraudulent transfer paperwork into the public real estate registry. He paid the recording fee in cash while watching the government clerk scan the counterfeit document directly into the state database. The very next morning, Gavin and Avery loaded a rented commercial moving truck with all of their personal belongings to secure their physical hold on the asset. They drove straight to the Lake Norman property where Gavin immediately hired an emergency locksmith to forcefully drill out both heavy brass deadbolts on the front doors. Sharp metal shavings fell onto the porch as the technician bypassed the locks before installing a modern electronic keypad system to ensure I could never enter the house. Avery immediately submitted a formal change of address request to the Postal Service to create a documented paper trail proving their continuous physical occupation of the premises. With their elaborate legal cover story fully established, Gavin dressed in a tailored business suit to visit the main lobby of a federally insured commercial bank. He sat across from a senior loan officer while confidently placing the county-stamped copy of the forged deed onto the polished wooden desk. He submitted a formal mortgage application using the stolen waterfront estate as collateral to request a direct cash disbursement totaling $400,000. He calmly explained to the banking representative that he needed the liquidity to fund new investment opportunities while secretly planning to completely liquidate his underground gambling debts. The loan officer reviewed the stamped property records along with the application forms before accepting the entire package without raising any immediate suspicions. The representative forwarded the complete file directly to the credit department, where financial officers immediately initiated their rigorous underwriting process to evaluate the collateral before authorizing the massive release of federal funds. My business trip concluded perfectly on schedule right before my family gathered inside the most luxurious restaurant across Charlotte to celebrate my grandfather's 80th birthday. Picking up exactly from the chaotic moment where my father dropped his crystal glass onto the floorboards, Attorney Elliott calmly lifted the screen of his portable computer. He required verifiable proof regarding the exact legal status of the estate before making any accusations regarding the missing birthday present. He bypassed the public wireless network to establish a secure, encrypted connection directly through his cellular device before navigating toward the official county recorder database. The entire table watched in absolute silence while his fingers typed the specific property tax identification number associated with the Lake Norman estate into the search portal. A digital loading icon spun briefly on the display before producing a newly filed public record document designated as a PDF file, updated earlier that exact same week. Elliot downloaded the attachment without speaking a single word before physically rotating the laptop display away from himself to face my grandfather Calvin alongside me. The electronic page illuminated the dining space with a high-resolution scan of a finalized quitclaim deed, legally transferring the waterfront property ownership directly over to Gavin. I leaned closer to examine the digital paperwork before raising my hand to point my index finger directly at the authorization line located near the bottom margin. I made sure to project my voice clearly across the table so every single person sitting nearby could hear my precise observation without any misunderstandings. The letter C in my first name is dragged backward in the completely wrong direction, while the overall spacing between the letters fails to match my natural handwriting, I stated while maintaining direct eye contact with the man who raised me. I have never stepped foot inside that specific notary office located out in the suburbs, nor did I ever sign any legal document surrendering my property to Gavin. Alan immediately pulled a cloth napkin from his lap to aggressively wipe the heavy beads of sweat forming rapidly across his forehead, while shifting uncomfortably in his seat. Alan continuously struggled to maintain his confident facade, while the sheer weight of his illegal actions began to crush his arrogant demeanor right in front of our eyes. He forced a remarkably hollow smile onto his face before reaching his arm across the table in a desperate attempt to block my grandfather from viewing the computer screen. He essentially tried to physically cover up the undeniable digital evidence of his financial crimes, using his bare hands while stammering out a continuous stream of fabricated excuses. I only intended to hold the property temporarily because I completed the transfer paperwork so Gavin could possess tangible assets to prove his financial stability to his business partners, Alan claimed, while attempting to project authority. We fully plan to instruct him to transfer the deed back into your name the moment our family successfully stabilizes our current financial situation with the lenders. He lowered his voice into a harsh whisper while demanding that we keep this private matter quiet instead of causing a public scene in front of the other prominent restaurant patrons. Carol finally lifted her head from the table to immediately support her husband by deploying her usual guilt-tripping tactics against me to deflect the blame. She utilized a deeply reproachful tone while pressuring me to endure the blatant theft for the sake of maintaining our familial harmony during a celebratory event. She explicitly insisted that I was behaving selfishly by obsessing over a piece of real estate when my younger brother desperately needed the asset to survive his current hardships. Calvin completely ignored their pathetic attempts at justifying felony document forgery while sitting perfectly still in his leather dining chair with his hands resting firmly upon his walking implement. He slowly lifted his heavy wooden walking cane approximately 40 centimeters into the air before slamming the metal base violently downward against the polished granite floor. The resulting impact created a deafening crack that instantly severed the desperate stream of excuses pouring out of my parents' mouths while causing several nearby diners to jump in their seats. The sheer physical dominance of that single authoritative sound caused the approaching waitstaff to immediately spin around on their heels to retreat far away from our designated dining area. Elliot pushed his prescription glasses higher up the bridge of his nose, while his sharp legal instincts recognized this forged property transfer represented merely a fraction of a much larger financial conspiracy. He understood the criminals willing to commit federal mortgage fraud rarely stopped at stealing a single piece of real estate. He opened a completely new browser window on his computer before navigating directly toward the Mecklenburg County Family Court Administrative Database. He meticulously typed my grandfather's legal surname into the active judicial query bar to sweep the local legal system for any recent unauthorized litigation maneuvers. The digital loading icon spun briefly against the white background before returning a newly generated docket number matching an official petition submitted exactly at 9 o'clock that Wednesday morning. Elliot clicked the hyperlinked document title before methodically reading the embedded legal text aloud, so every single person sitting around our table could hear the precise terminology. Alan and Carol had officially filed a formal petition for emergency conservatorship targeting my grandfather without providing any prior notification to our established legal representatives. They purposefully attached a completely fabricated medical evaluation signed by an unverified suburban clinic falsely diagnosing Calvin with severe advanced dementia. The fraudulent paperwork explicitly claimed he suffered a total loss of independent civil capacity while requesting the immediate suspension of his personal financial autonomy. The petition demanded that Alan be granted immediate total authority over all medical decisions alongside complete unrestricted access to every single bank account registered under the family trust. Although the mandatory court hearing had not yet occurred and the presiding judge had not issued any temporary rulings, the sheer existence of this submitted paperwork exposed the true depths of their monstrous betrayal. I stared at the digital court stamp before speaking my realization out loud to ensure Alan understood exactly how thoroughly his criminal plot had failed. Alan did not simply orchestrate the Lake Norman property theft to bail Gavin out of his reckless online gambling debts. He actively intended to manipulate the judicial system to seize absolute control over my grandfather's entire $27 million estate portfolio. Alan desperately needed that massive influx of stolen liquid capital to resurrect his failing automotive dealership before his own commercial creditors forced his business into total bankruptcy. He was perfectly willing to strip his own father of his basic human rights and lock him inside a care facility just to maintain his fragile illusion of corporate success. Alan violently lunged his upper body across the center of the dining table while extending his arm to aggressively slam the laptop screen shut before anyone else could read the documents. Elliot forcefully swatted the approaching hand away with a rigid block that produced a loud smack echoing sharply across the quiet dining space. The seasoned attorney warned my father to step back immediately, while reminding him that assaulting an officer of the court would only add another criminal charge to his impending federal indictment. The sudden physical altercation caused several affluent customers seated at neighboring tables to turn their heads to closely observe the escalating family dispute. Carol raised her hands to cover her mouth in sheer panic as the meticulously constructed facade of their wealthy lifestyle began crumbling apart in front of a live audience. Gavin sat completely paralyzed next to Avery while staring blankly at the glowing computer screen that just obliterated their only criminal safety net. Calvin slowly stood up from his leather dining chair while methodically adjusting the bottom button of his tailored suit jacket to re-establish his immaculate posture. He looked directly into the faces of his son and daughter-in-law with an absolutely emotionless stare that conveyed total permanent finality regarding their relationship. He did not raise his voice to scream at them, nor did he waste a single breath demanding any further explanations for their treasonous behavior against their own blood. He firmly gripped the polished handle of his wooden walking cane before offering a silent nod toward Elliot alongside a brief gesture instructing me to gather my personal belongings immediately. We collected our winter coats before walking straight out the main glass doors of the luxury restaurant without looking back a single time. We completely abandoned Alan, Carol, Gavin, Avery sitting frozen in their seats, while completely surrounded by their rapidly cooling plates of expensive untouched food. Early the following morning, my grandfather Calvin sat completely upright inside the glass-enclosed conference room of the downtown law firm to decisively sign a thick stack of revocation documents. Elliot officially terminated the medical proxy authorization that Calvin previously granted to Alan exactly 5 years ago by filing the revocation documents directly into the state registry. He immediately dispatched an expedited legal courier toward the county court clerk office to formally invalidate the pending emergency conservatorship petition, using my grandfather's authenticated signature. After finalizing the required administrative paperwork, Elliot pressed the speaker button on his desk telephone to contact the specific commercial bank branch where Gavin originally submitted his mortgage application. The senior risk management director answered the secure communication line to confirm his commercial underwriting department effectively froze Gavin's extensive loan file right during the final verification stage of the approval process. The internal bank inspection team discovered blatant geographical discrepancies surrounding the physical notary seal stamped directly onto the submission paperwork, alongside multiple formatting errors matching known fraudulent templates. The bank compliance officers officially submitted a formal suspicious activity report directly into the Federal Financial Crime Enforcement Network to permanently flag the fraudulent real estate collateral. Elliot instructed the bank executive to merge the current phone call with 2 special agents representing the Financial Crimes Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Elliot utilized his encrypted email server to transmit the certified copies of the actual property deeds to the federal agents to definitively prove the ongoing forgery. The lead federal agent introduced himself over the speakerphone before meticulously explaining the severe legal implications regarding the pending mortgage transaction that Gavin was attempting to execute. He clarified that Gavin actively registered to receive the requested loan disbursement through a standardized federal electronic funds transfer routed across multiple state lines. The act of utilizing counterfeit real estate documentation to solicit a cash disbursement from a federally insured institution completely violates the federal wire fraud statutes. The secondary agent elaborated that intervening prematurely through a civil lawsuit would merely scare the suspects away, while leaving the federal prosecutors with a significantly weaker legal case. The special agents explicitly instructed my grandfather alongside me to refrain from filing any civil injunctions or local police reports to halt the impending financial transaction. The Federal Bureau desperately needed Gavin to walk into the bank branch completely unaware of the ongoing investigation, so they could execute a highly coordinated sting operation. They wanted to arrest my brother exactly at the specific moment he physically signed his legal name onto the finalized closing documents inside the bank. They required the perpetrators to actively trigger the banking network because initiating the electronic funds transfer officially cements the crime as a federal felony offense. Alan and Gavin truly believed they possessed the perfect financial scheme to extract massive amounts of untraceable liquidity from the banking system to erase their mounting debts. They remained entirely oblivious to the undeniable fact that their chosen method of extracting the funds directly transformed their local property dispute into a massive federal prosecution. The lead agent confirmed his task force was currently drafting the necessary federal arrest warrants to present before a federal magistrate judge later that afternoon. Elliot agreed to the proposed law enforcement strategy before drafting a confidential non-disclosure agreement to ensure nobody inside the law firm leaked the impending sting operation. The federal agents coordinated directly with the bank management team to schedule the final closing appointment for exactly 10 o'clock on Friday morning. They instructed the bank employees to prepare the official disbursement paperwork exactly as they normally would for any legitimate borrowing client to maintain the absolute illusion of success. The bank director confirmed they would provide the federal agents with direct access to the interior security camera network to monitor the suspects during the signing process. The authorities planned to position undercover operatives inside the bank lobby while maintaining a heavily armed tactical perimeter located just outside the main building entrance. My grandfather remained perfectly silent throughout the strategic conference call while listening to the federal authorities plan the imminent arrest of his own son and grandson. He stared at the polished mahogany conference table while accepting the harsh reality that his descendants freely chose to commit federal crimes to maintain their fabricated lifestyle. I sat next to him while feeling a profound sense of closure, knowing the legal trap was finally locked into place without any remaining escape routes. Exactly at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, Gavin confidently strode inside the main lobby of the commercial bank while projecting the arrogant demeanor of a highly successful millionaire. He wore an expensive navy blue tailored suit, while guiding Avery with Alan walking closely behind Carol, directly toward a private VIP conference room, completely enclosed by transparent glass walls. The group took their designated seats on the plush leather chairs surrounding a polished mahogany table, where a thick stack of finalized mortgage documents awaited their arrival. They casually laughed while exchanging cheerful banter with the senior credit consultant who remained entirely unaware of the impending federal sting operation about to unfold inside his office. Gavin reached inside his breast pocket to retrieve a silver fountain pen before rapidly flipping through the densely printed pages detailing the strict repayment terms of the massive loan. He exuded absolute confidence while pressing the ink tip against the paper to finalize his signature directly upon the designated borrower authorization line. He casually passed the heavy metal pen across the table toward Avery so she could officially sign her own name on the witness verification section to complete the required documentation. The banking representative gathered the signed paperwork before firmly pressing a red confirmation stamp across the top page to authenticate the successful execution of the mortgage agreement. He subsequently turned his attention toward his computer monitor before striking the keyboard to officially authorize the electronic wire transfer, distributing the massive loan directly into their designated account. The precise moment the digital confirmation message appeared on the glowing screen, the heavy glass doors of the conference room swung violently open to permanently interrupt the celebratory atmosphere. 4 specialized agents representing the Federal Bureau of Investigation walked straight inside the room, accompanied by 3 uniformed officers deployed from the United States Marshal Service. The federal authorities completely refrained from drawing their service weapons while simply raising their gold badges high into the air before loudly announcing an active federal arrest warrant. 2 towering marshals immediately flanked Gavin from behind, before physically forcing his arms backward to lock heavy steel handcuffs securely around his wrists, with a loud metallic click. They forcefully ordered him to stand up from his leather chair while strictly reciting his constitutional rights to remain silent during the ongoing federal detention process. Avery immediately dropped the fountain pen onto the table before stumbling several steps backward to physically distance herself from the sudden law enforcement raid occurring inside the confined space. She frantically raised both of her hands up to her shoulders while screaming loudly that she knew absolutely nothing regarding the forged property documents or the stolen waterfront estate. She desperately attempted to claim complete ignorance, while explicitly denying any involvement with the illegal mortgage scheme in a pathetic attempt to avoid her own impending arrest. Alan reacted with aggressive indignation by attempting to forcefully swat a federal agent away so he could retrieve his cellular phone to dial his defense attorney. Another tactical officer instantly grabbed his shoulder before forcefully pinning his face flat against the transparent glass wall to conduct a thorough physical search for any concealed weapons. Carol erupted into hysterical panic, while desperately lunging forward to grab the arm of the nearest investigator in a frantic effort to physically stop the federal officers from taking her son. Her chaotic movements knocked several stacks of organized banking documents completely off the table while scattering the fraudulent paperwork across the entire floor of the VIP room. My grandfather Calvin stood silently beside me upon the elevated mezzanine corridor overlooking the entire financial lobby through a specialized unidirectional observation mirror. We maintained a completely detached perspective while watching the chaotic scene unfold exactly according to the strategic plan designed by the federal authorities earlier that week. The armed officers firmly grabbed the remaining family members by their shoulders before physically escorting them out of the secure conference room without allowing them to speak another word. We stared downward without displaying a single ounce of sympathy, while watching the federal agents march the four struggling criminals straight through the crowded public lobby filled with shocked customers. The automatic sliding doors opened to reveal a row of unmarked law enforcement vehicles waiting directly outside the main entrance of the commercial bank under the bright morning sun. The tactical team secured the handcuffed suspects inside the reinforced transport vehicles before driving away toward the federal detention center to process their massive financial criminal charges. Exactly 18 months passed since the heavy steel handcuffs echoed loudly across the polished marble floor of that commercial banking facility. Inside the solemn courtroom of the United States District Court, covering the Western District of North Carolina, the presiding federal judge struck his wooden gavel against the sounding block to deliver the final punitive mandates. Gavin received a definitive 8-year custody sentence inside a federal penitentiary for actively committing massive bank fraud alongside utilizing forged legal documents to secure illicit funds. He silently lowered his head, while the court bailiff physically escorted him out of the courtroom to begin serving his lengthy incarceration period. Avery successfully negotiated a comprehensive immunity agreement by surrendering crucial physical evidence directly to the prosecuting attorneys while sitting inside the federal interrogation room. She officially terminated her marriage engagement before permanently relocating outside the state jurisdiction immediately following the initial law enforcement raid to completely avoid the resulting public scandal. Alan, alongside Carol, narrowly avoided physical incarceration by cooperating extensively with the federal investigators during the prolonged judicial discovery phase. The federal magistrate ultimately sentenced my parents to serve 3 years of strict federal probation for their direct participation in the overarching financial conspiracy. The judge explicitly mandated them to complete 600 hours of supervised community service as a mandatory condition of their continued freedom outside the penitentiary system. The exorbitant legal fees required to hire elite criminal defense attorneys completely depleted their remaining financial resources over the course of the lengthy federal trial. Alan was forced to officially file for total personal bankruptcy, while aggressive commercial creditors arrived with towing trucks to permanently seize his entire automotive dealership facility, alongside all his remaining vehicle inventory. The federal court formally declared the counterfeit property transfer document completely legally void, while officially restoring full ownership rights of the Lake Norman estate back into my name, exactly as my grandfather originally intended. Calvin systematically revoked his previous last will before completely removing Alan from the entire generational inheritance structure through a series of ironclad legal maneuvers finalized by attorney Elliott inside his office. My grandfather officially executed new legal directives designating me as the sole controlling director governing the entirety of his $27 million estate portfolio. I immediately assumed direct administrative management over the various commercial real estate investments, while ensuring nobody from my former family could ever access a single cent of the accumulated wealth. We successfully secured the financial legacy of the family trust while permanently severing all legal ties with the individuals who aggressively attempted to steal our future. During a quiet Sunday afternoon, I loaded my luggage into my vehicle before driving away from the Lake Norman property to return toward my primary apartment located inside the city center. I navigated the familiar driving route while approaching a major suburban intersection, requiring me to fully stop my vehicle at a red traffic signal. I casually glanced through my passenger window while observing two individuals wearing bright orange reflective safety vests working alongside the concrete sidewalk. They were actively utilizing metal grabbing tools to collect discarded plastic bottles while placing the garbage into heavy plastic bags under the strict physical supervision of a uniformed probation officer. I immediately recognized the exhausted figures picking up trash along the dirty highway median as the very same people who raised me. Carol suddenly lifted her head while recognizing the specific vehicle model alongside the exact license plate number of my stationary car idling at the intersection. She immediately dropped her metal grabbing tool onto the concrete pavement before frantically sprinting toward the edge of the pedestrian curb. She desperately raised her dirt-covered hands into the air while visibly shouting my name through the thick acoustic glass of my locked car doors. She essentially begged for my attention while attempting to re-establish a connection with the daughter she previously sacrificed to protect a convicted federal criminal. I completely refused to roll down my tinted windows, nor did I press my foot against the brake pedal for another single second to acknowledge her pathetic display. I maintained a perfectly forward gaze while keeping both of my hands positioned firmly upon the leather steering wheel of my vehicle. The precise moment the suspended traffic signal shifted from red to green, I calmly shifted the transmission gear before pressing my foot directly against the accelerator. I drove straight through the busy intersection without looking through the rearview mirror a single time, while permanently leaving the people who used to represent my family trapped behind me in the dust.